Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive! This week, I begin a series on a classic RPG, Mekton Zeta. And of course, its supplement book, Mekton Zeta Plus. Mekton is, well, simply put, Mekton Zeta is an anime mecha role-playing game. And I always found it amusing and fun for its flexibility. So, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about Mekton Zeta. So normally when I talk about an RPG, I like to talk about the history of the setting and then the default setting itself. That doesn't quite work with Mekton Zeta. You see, there is no default setting, and there is no defined history. This is because it's actually a very, very flexible, almost a generic system. If you are creative, you can do a lot of things with it. I mean, you could do magical girls using the rules for the lightest grades of power armor. That's kind of how flexible the system is. And it, again, doesn't have its own default setting. Instead, it has a section where it gives advice for how to GM this game. And among all the things it mentions, think like a television producer, be dramatic, stuff like that, it has one core piece of advice. Don't think of your game as a standard campaign. Think of it as an anime TV series. And so you want to have your story arcs, have episodes and season arcs, and the overall arc of the whole campaign, the whole series. But it's flexible. You can literally do crazy stuff with it. The last game I ran, the PCs were on a ship. A ship that was going out to bring the war to the enemy. It was designed to look non-threatening, it was a compact design, and it didn't really have space for shield generators. But it had space for mecha, because it was a mecha carrier. So what was done was there were 3 mecha built. These mecha, one went onto the bow of the ship, one went onto each wing, and between the 3 of them, they created a shield for the ship. All the advantages of having mecha, all the disadvantages of having mecha, but it was a shield system that wouldn't have fit on the ship any other way. Or at least it wouldn't have fit in any other way that would have left the ship able to do other stuff that it needed to do. And that's the sort of stuff you can do with this. You are supposed to think crazy. You're supposed to think anime. And that's what you do. Now, as I mentioned, it doesn't have its own setting. It has this absolutely awesome intro story of, the invaders coming with advanced technology, defeating all the far colonies, and leaving the handfuls of survivors scrounging up a strike force, a small task force with salvaged mecha and barely trained pilots to go out and retake their the storytellers' homeland worlds. But that's not the default setting. Even though it has a whole bunch of bright colored pages, there's also a short story in there of someone fighting their way to the tyrant at the United Nations, or stories of someone arguing with space pirates to do something, and various other bits. Yes, you could kind of work them all together into the same setting, but you don't have to. It has sections talking about a mecha anime without mecha. And, you have so many different ways you can do mecha. You've got the various weights, the weight ratings of them, go all the way up to very, very heavy mecha. You can do the small things called road strikers that are basically inspired by the cyclones and such from Genesis Climber Mospeada. And then you've got fighters and ships. Starships are a whole fun section of design. And the system itself, it is a ridiculously straightforward system. It is almost always going to be a skill, an attribute, or something relating to an attribute, and a D10. And that's determining what your success is or how well you do. Damage is mixes of D6s and D10s. Skill tests are attribute plus skill plus D10. And that's really the core of it. It is extremely flexible because once you've gotten that stuff done, once you decide what type of game you're running and what sort of mecha everyone's using, you get to get into the game itself. So, this is actually a very, very short video because there isn't much to talk about on this side of things. Next week, however, I'm going to talk about character creation. And then the next week, I'm going to talk about mecha creation. And these are the elements that I found the most interesting about Mekton Zeta. So until next week, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.